So what I did first was I created the shape on my computer and then just printed it out onto an A3 sheet, and then I done a line to show where the base was going to go, so it was make it a little bit easier for me to position. Now you don't have to actually do this on a computer, you can do freehand and draw it out yourself. So what I've done is I've put the A3 sheet inside a cello bag, but you can actually just place it under plastic or whatever you've got to hand. And then we begin with mixing the acrylic diamonds with some resin which has been tinted with 1 drop of teal India ink to give it a bit of a bluey colour. So all you need to do is just add a small amount of resin onto the stones and then just mix them up to make sure that all of the stones are completely coated. You don't want any stones not coated in resin, so take your time and make sure that each of these stones are completely coated in the resin, because as they form a bond, it's what gives the piece its strength and stops it from falling apart when you pick it up and what have you. So once all your stones, your acrylic diamonds are completely coated, you can then start spooning them onto your design. Now paying particular attention around the stand, because we want to make sure that the gems are well and truly adhered to the top of the stand, because you don't want that snapping off and breaking. So I'm going to put a generous amount of stones all over this piece here. Now I'm going to build them up so it's almost like a curve, it's curved, so it's not completely flat. So we do use quite a lot of these stones for this. So you know, people say, oh, that's going to be quite expensive in stones, but the price that I'm actually selling this piece for more than covers for the cost of the stones, and obviously the amount of work that goes into putting it together. Because it's done in several layers, because you've got to wait for this first layer to cure, then lift it up, support the other side, and then do the next layer on the other side, because we don't have just a flat side. It's going to be 3D on 3-dimensional on both sides. So we're just keeping using the lines as a guide. It doesn't have to be perfect, because you've got the shape of the stones, which gives it a nice rough edge anyway, but it just gives you a guide on where you need to place these stones. And then once you've done this side, we just then leave this to cure overnight. Now here you can see I'm just adding more where I feel it needs more adding, so just making sure that that's well and truly coated, that there's plenty of stones there, because if you're not generous with this part, then you stand the risk of the piece snapping because it's too thin. So you need to make sure that it's got plenty of stones here. Now you can use other things like crushed glass, and I may well do a crushed glass version, but you know what I'm like with these acrylic diamonds, I do like them. So this is the next day now, and this has been curing overnight. And so now we're going to work on putting the stones on the other side. So I do need to find a way of balancing this so that we don't have any runoff with the resin. So I've got some acrylic, I don't really know what they're called, those acrylic sheet things that I had from a different project from when I had my laser engraver, and that was what was left over. So these are what I use to prop up my resin pieces so that they're not on the table, and it means that I can have them pretty level as well. So just like the front, we're going to apply a generous helping of acrylic diamonds on this side as well. So just following the same idea of the front, just following the shape and then making sure there's plenty of stones to make sure that everything's well and truly stuck, and it's got some depth to it as well, and it's not too thin, because you don't want it to look a bit flimsy. You want it to be quite substantial and look like, you know, there's something about this sculpture, and it's not just, you know, a thin sheet of resin, if that makes sense. So here I want to show you my bright idea that I had for balancing this to do the base. So as you can see, I'd stuck it through the hole in the stool and then propped up the trays with whatever I could find to get it to the right level. I also made sure that the stand was perpendicular, square, wasn't leaning, and then I done the same thing I did with the top. I mixed the acrylic diamonds in some resin with a tint of teal India ink, and then just started pouring that on the top like so. I must say I was quite pleased with how things were going at this point. That was, of course, until I realised my big mistake. But what I did do was I let it cure for quite some time, so the resin was still sticky when I realised my mistake, and I was able to pull the stem out without disturbing the base because it had cured enough, and thankfully it left a nice hole for me to be able to leave it to cure overnight, and then the next day I was able to then just slot that back into the hole and then just resin that back in. So as you can see, some of the most simplest of ideas can sometimes be very effective.